Welcome to Halacha in a Year, where we can get to learn all the most relevant halacha through the prism of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. You are listening to Rabbi Ya'akov Trump. This year is kindly sponsored by the Moshe Group and CA in zechus of Rivka Biela, bas נחמה שיפרה, and in honor of Rabbi Trump. The halachas we're going to be learning today pertain to what's called Kadish Yasam, the Mourners Kadish, and this is Siman of the 26th chapter in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. This is a longer section in halacha, so we're going to break it into two sections. Section number one, we're going to deal with three concepts: the value of saying Kadish, who says Kadish, and when to say Kadish. In part two, we'll deal with precedence, meaning who gets the right to say Kadish first, and the application to leading the Tefillah. Let's jump straight into the first three values here. First concept is the value of saying Kadish. Let's just take a little bit of background first. The Ramah, this is Rav Moshe Isserles, in his comments, points to a medrash which says, he found a medrash that when a son recites Kadish for their parents, they bring a certain level of aliyah, a certain level of ascent from the soul, and helps them in the Olam HaNeshamas, the world of the Neshamas. What is this medrash referring to? So the Bir Hagra, that's a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch written by the Vilna Gaon, points to this, that this is a medrash Tanchum and a medrash Meseches Kala that refers to this as well. The Benoras Ma'or, Rav Yitzchak Abuhav, actually quotes this medrash, and the medrash quotes a very strange and fantastic story which describes Rabbi Akiva, one of the sages of the Mishnah, who witnessed a man who was running along, and was blackened by coal, was completely covered by coal. He was carrying wood in his shoulders and running as quickly as he could, as quick as a horse. Rabbi Akiva asked him, why are you so busy? And it turns out this person was not a live person. He was from the world of the Neshamos, and he was quickly collecting wood upon which he would be burnt. So this was his daily activity, was to get the fuel for the punishment that he was about to endure. Why? He said because he worked as a tax collector when he was in life, and he took advantage of his position of power, and he was easy on the rich, and he was very oppressive to the poor. And he described that even he had engaged in an illicit relationship with an engaged woman on Yom Kippur. And Rabbi, is this person obviously lived a very decrepit life, and now he's paying for it. So Rabbi Akiva said to him, is there anything that can be done for you to help you in this state, because you're no longer in a position to be able to fix things? The man said to him, there's nothing that can happen. There's no one left behind. So he said, is there any, Rabbi Akiva asked, do you have a son who can say Baruch Hu es Hashem Varach, to ask other people to sanctify Hashem's name? And he said that he died while his wife was pregnant, and he didn't know if she'd given birth to a son or a daughter. So Rabbi Akiva went to city, and he found finally the place where this person lived, and he found out that his wife had a son, and this child had been born and was not circumcised even. Rabbi Akiva went on, circumcised the child, taught him how to bench, how to say Shema, and when the boy was able to reach the fitting age and call out Baruch Hashem Avarach, at that point in time, the man came to Rabbi Akiva in a dream and told him that he had been saved from some of the suffering that he had to undergo in the next world because of his actions. And from here we see that there's a very powerful point of a child, a son who's going to be saying or eliciting from the crowd, saying the Davar Shebekdusha as well. It is important to know just a few basic questions on this point. What else is important to do for a person who's departed? So many other things, but in the realm of davening, the Ramah also adds in to get maftir during the year of Avelos, not every week, but to get maftir and haftarah for a man to daven from the Abba, to lead the davening, and to daven especially on a Ma'ariv and Motzei Shabbos, because on Shabbos, the Neshamas, the souls, get a degree of reprieve from the world of Gehinnom, and so therefore when they return, there's a special aliyah which should be done during the time of their Avelos or the week before their Yortzeit. What if I'm not able to do all these things? So we'll see at the end that there are many other things that can be done. Living a life of Torah and mitzvahs, living a life of harmony and shalom is much more impactful than just being able to daven. Now, why is it called a Kadish Yasam? Why is it called a Mourners Kadish? It's not just the Mourners Kadish, the orphans Kadish. So really, the main focus over here is to daven for the Amud. Davening for the Amud is seen as the main source of giving zechus. The Kadish Yasam, the Kadish is for a minor who cannot daven for the Amud. So a young man who's below 13, cannot daven for the Amud, so he's left only with the Kadish, which means that's why it's called the Kadish Yasam, the orphan's Kadish. But really, the davening is more important as well. It's important, just as a side note, as a comment here, if your currency is leading the davening and getting others to say Devarim Shevik Dusha, so you're going to say Kadish and make people say Yesh Mei Rabba, or you're going to lead the davening and make people say Kodesh, 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 and Baruch Kavod Hashemim Kamoi. If that is what's so important, and we express this by being upset when we're not able to do this for our loved one, then it would make so much sense not to talk and interrupt those things when somebody else is doing them, because if that is the currency of what's valuable, then it should be the currency even when one's not doing it as well. So just a comment in terms of focusing on what really is important, because if this, and it is so important. We move on to our second concept, and that is who says Kadish. So let's jump straight in. Who is the chiyuv? Who is the obligation to say Kadish for? So it is a son for a father and a mother. That's the primary person who's obligated. Can someone who if somebody lost, God forbid, both parents, and is in the year of Avelis for both parents, does that make them more of a chiyuv, more of an obligation than a person who has only lost one parent? And the answer is no. They're of equal standing as well. Very important question. Can a daughter say Kadish? So this happens to be a dispute in the Pa'iskim. The Pesach Shuvah quotes the Chavos Yair, who writes that a person who dies and does not leave sons to say Kadish them, then the daughter may recite Kadish, may ikra din. But he said, but generally speaking, we try to avoid these types of changes because it weakens the practices of Klal Yisrael. He said, and concludes that it's a better idea not to. The Yalkut Yosef, that's Rav Vadia Yosef's son in Sardik Halacha, points out that women should not say Kadish. This is really moving towards practices which have been an extension of the reform movement. The Gesher HaChaim, Rav Yechiel Mechutukachonsky, points out a more lenient approach. He says that if you have a daughter who is below the age of bat mitzvah, she may say Kadish, but some say only in a private minyan in the house rather than in shul itself. Rav Henken, that's this is the grandson of Rav Eliyahu Henken, points out in Hapardes that he points out that there has been a practice for women to say Kadish in the women's section if there are men who are actually saying it, but it shouldn't be just she's saying it alone as well, because that would be, and obviously a person needs to, in such a situation, should be dressed in an appropriate fashion when coming to shul as well. Rav Moshe Feinstein talks about such a practice. He references this. He says it's a tzarech. He doesn't give a final recommendation, but he does point out that there was such a practice for women to say Kadish in the women's section, but he points out that it's not inappropriate to come into the men's section, which sometimes had happened. The Kitzur himself, over here, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch points out that a woman may only say Kadish in a home minyan, not in shul, and really this depends on the different practice and the different practice and minhagim of different shuls, and a shul should be consulted about their specific practices. It is worthwhile noting that if there is a son and a daughter, the son is the obligated one, and that is sufficient. That's the way it should be done. It's not necessary for the daughter to also do it as well. The case we talk about over here is where there are no sons to say it. In this case, when there are no sons to say it, then oftentimes there is a priority in halacha about a son-in-law, about a grandson. There are a sibling, a spouse. There are people who will opt in. We'll deal with it as well. What if somebody wants to say Kaddish for a non-parent? So, for instance, God forbid a person has to say Kaddish for a child, a sibling, a spouse, a grandparent who has no children to say Kaddish. So, in that case, if there is a chiyuv, there already is a son who's supposed to be doing the Kaddish, that should be the person saying it. But if there is not a chiyuv, there's no one else saying it, then that person is indisposed or not religious and is not going to be saying Kadish, then the other relative may certainly say Kadish, but they do not reach the level of an obligation. So that grandfather, that grandson, that sibling, that husband may say Kadish, but does not take the Amud, does not lead the davening and push other people out for that, because they are not a chiyuv in that respect. They're not the same level of obligation. Finally, third and last concept for today, when to say Kadish. So when does the Kadish start? The Kadish starts from the time of burial, unless, of course, there was a death before Shabbos. Burial could not take place before Shabbos, and burial's taking place after Shabbos. Then in that case, the person is an onain, in a state of limbo before the burial, and if they come to shul on Shabbos, which they should be doing, then they're allowed to say Kadish already before the burial. But that does not start the ticker counting, but that they're allowed to say in such a situation. But if, let's say, the burial is going to be tomorrow and it's a weekday, he should not come to shul and he should not be saying Kadish. When is it said until? So it's 11 months from the burial. So for example, if the burial was on the 10th of Shvat, then the Kadish will be stopping 11 months later on the 9th of Teves. It's a month and one day before, because otherwise already the 10th of Teves is already into the 12th month. What if it's a leap year? Is it 12 months of Kadish or 11 months of Kadish? So halacha is it's always 11 months. So in the above example, if the death was on the burial was on the 10th of Shvat, the Kadish will end 11 months later, which would be on the 9th of Kislev. Now that's going to be a 2-month gap between the yahrzeit and the Kadish, but that's because it's 11 months because of the extra Adar. What about if a death was a day or two before burial? When does the Kadish begin measured from? It's always from burial and not from death. Okay, the Kadish starts from the time of burial. Why not 12 months of Kadish? Why is it 11 months? So we need to assume that in the year following a death is the time of the most acute din, acute justice for the soul of the departed, and that can go up to the level of 12 months. A child, when saying Kadish for their parent, needs to assume that their parent did not warrant 12 months of full din, and therefore will say 11 months in respect to their parent, appreciating the fact that their parents would not need 12 months of din. It's important to know that in other practices, let's say in the Eldad Mizrach, in the Sephardic circles, some of the practices say up till the 11th month, skip a week, and then say the last 3 weeks as well. But in acknowledging this, there's this gap, but at the same time still saying the rest of the Kadishes. What if the son knows their parents were evil? Let's say the son knows that he's saying Kaddish for a father, a mother, and that person was a very morally decrepit person. So in that case, the Kitzur says that the son may say the full 12 months of Kaddish in that respect. What if one missed a Kaddish on a yahrzeit? So they were running, they got caught in traffic, it was a short winter day, they just could not make it, they feel absolutely terrible. So oftentimes it helps just to call somebody else to say Kaddish on their behalf as a shliach, but or if there's a sibling saying it. But let's say they completely missed it. The Kitzur does bring a practice that they are allowed to say the Kaddish of the Ma'ariv following, right? So that's a fallback option just for that Ma'ariv. What if there's no one to say Kadish in a shul? It's an important halacha. Kadish needs to be said, and it should be said by a person who already has lost one of their parents, and that will act as a zechus on behalf of all the deceased in the community. The 2 Kadishes which need to be said is the one after Aleinu in every of the 3 prayers of the day, the Ma'ariv, the Shachris, and the Mincha, and the Kadish D'Rabbanan in the morning after Rabbi Yishmael Omer. The rest of the Kadishes do not need to be filled in. The rest of the Kadish Yasams, the Mourners Kadishes as well. With this, we're going to conclude our first section on the halachas of Kadish. Have a wonderful and meaningful day.